What you need to know about Black Death. The Black Death was a staggering worldwide pandemic of bubonic plague that struck Europe and Asia in the mid-1300s. The plague showed up in Europe in October 1347, when 12 boats from the Black Sea moored at the Sicilian port of Messina. Individuals assembled on the harbors were met with a sickening amazement. Most mariners on board the boats were dead, those still alive were gravely sick and shrouded in dark heats that overflowed blood and discharge. Sicilian specialists quickly requested the armada of death ships out of the harbor, yet it was past the point of no return. Over the following 5 years, the Black Death would slaughter in excess of 20 million individuals in Europe, very nearly 33% of the mainland's populace. But how did the Black Plague start? Indeed, even before the passing boats maneuvered into port at Messina, numerous Europeans had heard gossipy tidbits about an extraordinary pestilence that was cutting a destructive way over the exchange courses of the Near and Far East. For sure, in the mid-1340s, the ailment had struck China, India, Persia, Syria and Egypt. The plague is thought to have begun in Asia more than 2,000 years back and was likely spread by exchanging ships. However, late examination has shown the pathogen liable for the Black Death may have existed in Europe as right on time as 3000 BC. What are the symptoms of the Black Plague? Europeans were barely prepared for the unpleasant truth of the Black Death. In People the Same, the Italian artist Giovanni Boccaccio expressed, toward the start of the disease, certain swellings, either on the crotch or under the armpits, waxed to the bigness of a typical apple, others to the size of an egg, some more and some less, and these the revolting named plague bubbles. Blood and discharge leaked out of these bizarre swellings, which were trailed by a large group of other undesirable side effects: fever, chills, regurgitating, loose bowels, awful throbbing painfulness, and afterward, quite expeditiously, passing. The bubonic plague assaults the lymphatic framework, causing growing in the lymph hubs. On the off chance that untreated, the contamination can spread to the blood or lungs. How did the Black Death spread? The Black Death was startlingly, aimlessly infectious. The minor contacting of the garments, composed Boccaccio, appeared to itself to impart the illness to the toucher. The malady was additionally unnervingly effective. Individuals who were alive and well when they headed to sleep around evening time could be dead before sun-up. In Europe, the Black Death previously showed up in the Mediterranean bowl and spread to the vast majority of the sides of the mainland in only a couple of years. Yet, the underlying episode is thought to have been operating at a prophet seaport of Kaffa, presently Theodosia, on the Crimean Peninsula. In 1346, Kaffa was a significant business exchanging post run by Genoese traders. That year it was attacked by the Mongol armed force, among whose positions were a developing number of plague victims. As the malady spread, one story has it, the Mongols intentionally flung invaded bodies over the dividers. Considerably almost certain is that the microscopic organisms entered the city and bugs conveyed by the rodents hastening between the attack lines. Anyway, it showed up. When the city acknowledged it confronted a plague scourge, the Genoese traders froze and fled, conveying the ailment with them to Italy. Antiquarians and researchers have confounded about how the Black Death took such a firm hold over such a tremendous zone in such a brief time frame. Some have proposed that the principal plague variation was pneumonic as opposed to bubonic on the grounds that airborne transmission appears to help its quick spread. In any case, pneumonic plague kills so rapidly, in a couple of hours, that it really spreads gradually in light of the fact that the host seldom lives sufficiently long to contaminate numerous individuals. Most proof focuses to the Black Death being the primary bubonic strain of plague, spread far and wide by insect-ridden rats on vessels and bugs on the bodies and garments of explorers. During a time of developing oceanic exchange, food and products were conveyed ever longer good ways from nation to nation, and the rodents and their microbes went with them, at an expected 24 miles per day. The constant progression of ocean, stream, and street traffic between business focuses spread the plague across immense separations in what is known as a metastatic jump. Big business urban communities were tainted first, and from that point the plague emanated to close by towns and towns, from where it would spread into the open country. The plague was likewise conveyed down the very much trodden ways of medieval explorers. Sacred destinations turned into extra focal points of provincial, national, and worldwide engendering. Indeed, even without such assistance, the plague is assessed to have moved inland in excess of a mile daily in the correct conditions. In freezing and dry zones it eased back to a quit, clarifying why Iceland and Finland were among the couple of spots to get away from its attacks. A well-known abstain in urban communities of the time ran, "Get out soon, speedy and far, and the later you return, the better." It was exhortation regarded by numerous who could stand to escape to the open country. However, this brought sad outcomes. Clearing didn't really spare those escaping, as some were at that point tainted or going with plague transporters. Nonetheless, it helped to spread the infection to new and perpetually remote spots as evacuees looked for the well-being of uninfected towns. Is there a treatment, and how did they treat the Black Death? Doctors depended on unrefined and unsophisticated methods, for example, phlebotomy and bubble spearing, rehearsals that were hazardous just as unsanitary, and odd practices, for example, consuming sweet-smelling spices and washing in rosewater or vinegar. Then, in a frenzy, solid individuals did everything they could to keep away from the wiped out. Specialists wouldn't see patients, ministers would not direct last ceremonies, and business people shut down their stores. Numerous individuals fled the urban areas for the open country, however even there they couldn't get away from the ailment. It influenced dairy animals, sheep, goats, pigs and chickens just as individuals. Actually, such huge numbers of sheep kicked the bucket that one of the outcomes of the Black Death was an European fleece deficiency. What's more, numerous individuals, frantic to spare themselves, even relinquished their wiped out and passing on friends and family. In this manner doing, Boccaccio stated, each idea to make sure about invulnerability for himself. Is the plague a way of God's punishment? Since they didn't comprehend the science of the malady, numerous individuals accepted that the Black Death was a sort of awesome discipline, retaliation for sins against God, for example, insatiability, sacrilege, apostasy, sex and experience. By this rationale, the best way to beat the plague was to win God's absolution. A few people accepted that the best approach to do this was to cleanse their networks of blasphemers and different miscreants. Along these lines, for instance, a huge number of Jews were slaughtered in 1348 and 1349. Thousands more fled to the scantily populated districts of Eastern Europe, where they could be moderately sheltered from the rampaging hordes in the urban areas. A few people adapted to the fear and vulnerability of the Black Death pandemic by lashing out at their neighbors, others adapted by turning internal and worrying about the state of their own spirits. Penitence to end the plague. Some privileged men joined parades of penitence that headed out from town to town and occupied with open presentations of repentance and discipline. They would beat themselves and each other with overwhelming calfskin lashes studded with sharp bits of metal while the townspeople looked on. For 33.5 days, the flagellants rehashed this custom 3 times each day. At that point they would proceed onward to the following town and start the procedure over once more. In spite of the fact that the penitence development provided some solace to individuals who felt weak even with puzzling catastrophe, it before long started to stress the Pope, whose position the flagellants had started to usurp. Despite this ecclesiastical obstruction, the development deteriorated. How did the Black Plague end? Or is it really over? The plague never truly finished and it came back intensely years after the fact. In any case, authorities in the Venetian-controlled port city of Ragusa had the option to slow its spread by continuing showing up mariners in seclusion until it was clear they were not conveying the infection, making social removing that depended on detachment to slow the spread of the sickness. The mariners were at first hung on their boats for 30 days, a Trentino, a period that was later expanded to 40 days, or an isolate, the cause of the expression isolate, and a training despite everything utilized today. The question is, does the plague still exist? Do we need to worry? Well, the Black Death pestilence had run its course by the mid-1350s, yet the plague returned each couple of ages for a considerable length of time. Present-day sanitation and general well-being rehearsals have incredibly moderated the effect of the illness, however have not disposed of it. While antitoxins are accessible to treat the Black Death, as indicated by the World Health Organization, there are as yet 1,000 to 3,000 instances of plague each year. We hope that you enjoy watching our videos. So please like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our updates. Remember, be healthy, stay home and save lives.